Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about what will be the wars or the likely or possible wars of the future. How will they be fought, and what we traditionally think of as a military, will that look and be very different, not only today, but in the future? I ask the question sort of widely without and I'll come back to my own views sort of at the end to sum it all up. But we look all across the West. There's a very, very determined attempt by the globalist elite to turn the armed forces of the West into, a gay lesbian extravaganza where the real enemy is misogyny or transphobia or something like that. That's the real enemy. And we sort of get the impression that the entire army is in the process of being, Western armies in the process of being transformed into effectively a political police to police and oppress the Western population. So the British Army will be there not to defend against, outside threats or foreign threats, but it'll be there to crush political dissent or to act as thought police. Now, if you're going to sort of have a thought police type sort of cadre there, you'd probably want a different sort of person. You're not going to want someone who's patriotic. You're not going to want someone that believes in the country. You're not going to want someone who's signing up to defend their fellow citizens. You're not going to want that. What you're going to want is people who hate the system, who have been taught to believe that misogyny, transphobic Nazis are everywhere in your community. You have to tear everything down and start again from. And so you're doing a good thing by attacking your own people because they're all Nazis. And that's what you have to do. So I think we're watching a transformation egged on and pushed by the globalists to say, well, the biggest enemy we've got to the globalist project isn't like Russia or China or something like that. I think it is, by the way, but in a different set of circumstances and conditions. The real enemy we've got is the people that we're having to oppress in order to implement and put the globalist project in place. So really our enemy are the people who are losing out heavily because of the globalist project, and they're the ones that we have to fight against, and they're the ones that our armed forces should be directed towards attacking and imprisoning and so on. So I think that's where we're heading in that side of it. I'm not sure it'll necessarily quite pan out like that, but I think that's where they're thinking that it's very 1984 and the real enemy is within. Which, by the way, when you look at any ideological government in any ideological way of running society at any time, anywhere, the main enemy they perceive is always within. Not that there aren't enemies outside, there are, but the main enemy they perceive is the thought enemy. The enemy who has the wrong ideas or isn't fully accepting the lies that they're told and so on. That's always perceived as the primary enemy. So I just want to look now at this idea of what will future wars look like. Will it be boots on the ground and air aces and the latest jet technology and this sort of thing, or will it be drones that are controlled from, quiet underground bunkers thousands of miles away? Will it be warfare, germ warfare, for example, released into the airborne or the water supply or something like that? Airborne sort of warfare. Will it be various types of genetic warfare? Will it be propaganda warfare? Definitely, that'll go on. Will it be cyber warfare, knocking out all the infrastructure? The more advanced an economy is, the more prone it is and susceptible it is and vulnerable it is to having infrastructure knocked out, such as electricity and so on, water supply and whatever. So Now, in the less sophisticated societies, like the third world type societies, they're much less exposed to that. So the American phrase will bomb them back into the Stone Age. A lot of these third world countries are pretty close to the Stone Age anyway. So knocking out an electricity plant or this or that's not going to, the water supply is distributed across tens of thousands of wells that are dug in the ground. It's not some central dam somewhere that can be just taken out. So how will the future warfare be? Cyber warfare will obviously be part of it. And what's the point of using nuclear weapons to absolutely flatten sophisticated infrastructure that's hugely expensive to build? Why would you knock all that out? You'd use whatever means you could of nuking the population, getting rid of them, or some of them, or somehow disabling them, and so you can keep all the infrastructure. Maybe you want the drone workers and the zombies to still work and consume and these sort of things. But the idea of leveling the infrastructure in the atomic bomb sense, I can't see anybody subscribing to that. It's utterly counterproductive. You could sort of maybe look at a tactical nuclear strike to if there's a large a gathering point of a large army or a critical military assets, and you could knock it out with a quick strike. That maybe still occur. You could do that, but I don't think an all-encompassing war that would create some sort of nuclear winter would be in anyone's interest. Nobody would really gain from that. The winners would only have the charred remains of nothing, to that they could use, so that there'd be no value. Maybe they could eliminate a threat, perhaps. Now, there are all sorts of other issues that'll go into, I think, future conflicts, such as overpopulation, where populations are, which populations are harder to control, and therefore you want to get rid of them, and so on. Will the war be ideological, as in, lesbians running around going, let's kill the misogynists, let's kill the transphobes, that sort of thing. So I think it'll come down to this. If you want to occupy and subdue, boots on the ground are still really the only way. If you want to try and bring folks to the table to say, look, enough already, I don't want to fight anymore, then you can do that with drones and cyber attacks. But if you look at the conflict at the moment in like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, that's dragged on far longer than I ever thought it would. The Ukraine's kept alive by massive Western support. They couldn't have lasted anywhere near this long. The Russians are not putting anywhere near the amount of muscle into it that they could. So it seems like nobody kind of really wants this war to end. It must be maybe a testing ground for something. Maybe each side thinks they're bleeding the other dry, or what. Hard to say. But it appears to be a war now that's no longer has an obvious or clear purpose. And I'm wondering whether regional conflicts like that will play out in similar fashion. No one seems to want to make a decisive strike, which again I find a little bit odd, because typically, given wars are so expensive and so consume so many resources, that it's usually in everyone's interest to try and bring it to an end. But there doesn't seem to be so here. So what will a future war look like, given that they're trying to emasculate and demasculinize pretty much all Western armies? So the amount of if you like, first-rate frontline troops that Western armies have is declining. They're more likely to have a majority of, lesbian paper pushers than they are fit dudes running around with guns. So clearly, the future conflict is going to have to occur in other areas, in other domains, such as cyber warfare, such as mass drone strikes. Such as use of various, chemical type warfare. So I think it'll sort of settle down into those categories. If you can unleash some sort of some sort of virus into the medical virus into the population, and you can sort of neutralize, turn them all into zombies or something, or make them incapable of reproduction, or various other. And again, I don't think warfare is necessarily going to be a decision that occurs, in one or two key battles or anything like that. It's more likely, I would think, to occur with a lot of groundwork preparation that may be conducted over years, decades possibly. To bring about the weakening of the other guys, the other side, so that when the confrontation occurs, they just go down like a sack of shit, and you sort of won without really having to expend vast frontline resources and take vast numbers of casualties. If you consider the scale of the conflict, for example, in Russia-Ukraine, the casualties are actually quite small, relative to that sort of type of conflict, which again suggests that the idea of massed frontline troops isn't going to be the future. And you could hardly say that the Ukrainian army is a frontline sophisticated force. So given the demasculinization of all Western armies and the use and the turning all the security forces to inward to monitor the population and make sure they use the correct pronouns of the latest transphobic whatever, or the latest trans whatever, then that's really where the maximum effort's going to be, policing and oppressing your own citizens. And the idea of an external war will be conducted again in drones and cyber warfare without frontline troops. Now, it may be different where your border abuts the other border and you're kind of right next to each other. That may have an effect. But if there's any distance to be covered over sea or land, or there's intermediate country, these sorts of things, I would be very surprised if there's any frontline troop type conflict. There could be proxy wars where, again, as in Ukraine, where forces sort of the EU, NATO, and the United States, all that sort of thing, are involved indirectly. There could be that. But the West won't have a capacity, I would suggest, somewhere over the next 10 to 15 years, there won't be a capacity to fight a boots on the ground type war. Anything other than a long distance war is unlikely to happen, in my view. I'll be interested to see what comments, what you think in the comments. But I think the nature of warfare has changed. The idea of mass warfare, millions of men mobilised and shooting across front line as the First and Second World War and so on was, then I don't think that will ever reoccur. And I'm not sure that they would even be possible to mobilise that many men or people generally who would be prepared to fight. White men have been told they're evil, Nazi, fascist, misogynists, and this, that, the next thing, and white supremacy. And I'd say be very few of them prepared to put their life on the line now. And those that are prepared to put their life on the line, the military don't want. Those that are proud enough and care enough about their fellow citizens, their country, the nationalists, if they feel that way, then the military don't want them. So in effect, the only people that are going to be there are going to be career, like that Millie dude who's you couldn't get more of a globalist flunky than him in the United States. So this is it's an interesting topic to see what will the wars of the future look like. But my take is it's going to be cyber warfare, mass drones, controlled from control rooms thousands of miles away, and again germ warfare, things like that. So propaganda warfare, of course. You've been fantastic to rate your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.